All right, finally starting with the repair of this oil cooler. We determined it was the oil cooler rather than the rear main seal. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this fresh air intake box off, get this intake off, throttle body as well, likely, and I will take videos as I go along to show where I'm at in the process. All right, to get this out the way, you need a flat head or 8mm at both ends. There's a plug here you gotta disconnect. It's next to the throttle body right there. Disconnect the same side with a flat head over here. Then let's see. Next, we're gonna get to the throttle body and the intake manifold on these cars. It shouldn't be too hard to get off. Let's see, we're gonna start. Do not disconnect the throttle position sensor. We don't want to end up having to relearn the throttle, so we're gonna leave that connected. But we can go ahead and disconnect this map sensor here. Squeeze at the end, pull it off, comes off simple. Let's see, you want to disconnect as least as possible. Go ahead and get that crankcase line off here. Let's see, there's another crankcase line that goes into the back of here, but we're going to ignore that for now. Let's see, probably going to end up unbolting the throttle body, but we're not going to unplug it. I don't feel like doing a relearn process today. Let's see. So yeah, I'll be back in. Let's see what size is that. That would be that'll be an 8mm. So 4 8mm bolts to get the starter body off. I'll be back when I unscrew it. All right, we got the starter body off. It's a bit of carbon buildup back here. So like you see this black around the edges, that is carbon buildup. So I'm likely going to clean that before I put it all together, just because I don't have to. I'm gonna recommend replacing this throttle body gasket. I'm just do it for this customer. It's a cheap part, so I ain't gonna charge her for it. Just gonna go ahead and replace that for her. Make sure we don't have any leaks or seals leaking when we put this back together. All right, so my phone died, so apologies for that. But next step after the throttle body is to take that intake manifold off. A brief side note, while my phone was dead, I did go ahead and clean the throttle body. This is how it should look. That carbon that gets stuck in there, that can cause this little valve right here. This valve here, that can cause it to get stuck sometimes, and can cause issues with acceleration. Ironically, I had an issue on my own car yesterday with the throttle position sensor. It was filthy. Cleaned it out, reset it. Codes went away. My car went back to normal. So I did go ahead and just clean this out as a courtesy. Do want to let you guys know that you do not have to take this fuel rail off. I took it off anyway, but you shouldn't need to. These O-rings right there, these go on top of the injectors, they did fall off while I took it off, so I'll be going ahead and replacing those free of charge for the customer. No biggie on that. But in order to get this rail off, you're gonna need an 8mm. You got about 1, 2, 3, 4. You got about 4 bolts there, 4 bolts, and you got some hidden ones up top. It's one here, one here. Now, in order to get these bolts up here at the top and this hidden one here as well, you can't use a regular 8mm. You need a, let's see, you need a 1/4 inch, a 1/4 inch extension and a 1/4 inch socket, because the regular 8mm, which is around here somewhere, it's too thick to fit in these walls. It doesn't even go down, so you will need a 1/4 inch, and there is no way around it. All right, taking this intake manifold off now. This is the upper intake manifold. So I went ahead and remove that out the way. Let's get this foam out the way. Now we can see the lower intake manifold. The oil cooler is beneath this. In order to get this lower intake manifold off, you need a T30 for this fuel rail. Also got to mention these were T30s as well, but it'll be 2 T30s to hit, let's see, gonna hit this bolt here, hit that bolt there. Then once that's up, we're gonna hit the bolts that's around the lower intake manifold. So that'll be 1, 2, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 8 8mm bolts. I do recommend using gloves. As you can see, the fuel does come out. You got a little bit of a fuel not a fuel leak, but a little bit of a fuel spill here, but it's okay. So I do recommend using gloves when you do this. All right, getting this lower intake manifold off, but before I do that, I did misspeak earlier. You actually do not have to remove the fuel rails. It actually comes up with it, since the fuel injectors are inside of the actual intake manifold. So no need to remove the fuel rail unless you kind of just want more flex, more space. You do need to remove the fuel injector plugs though, which I already have done on this side, or you can just simply, you could just simply toss it a little bit. But we're gonna cover these ports first so nothing gets into them. But you can leave the plugs connected on that side if you just want to kind of move this over, but we're going to disconnect them because I just want it out the way completely so I can properly do it. All right, so we have the lower intake manifold leak to the side, and this is the best part here. Now I get to show the customer why we told her not to get a remain and to get the oil cooler instead. So I'm gonna turn my flash on here. Hopefully you guys can see. This is the oil cooler, the infamous common leak on these 3.6 engines. And if you look down here, you can see oil trickling all down here. That darkness you see, and once I get the oil cooler out, you can see it more. That is fresh oil leaking all the way to the back of the transmission, to the top of the transmission, I'm sorry. But this is why we recommend you change out your oil cooler rather than your rear main seal. So let's see, in order to get this oil cooler out of there, we will need an E-socket. I believe these were, when I did it last time, I think they were E6s, maybe, or E10s. I'll double check that. Let's see here, we gotta get this line here off with some hose clamps. I forgot what size this was, but we'll double check. This would be the oil pressure sensor, and that one would be the, I forgot which one this was, but I will let you guys know since I take it out. We will be transferring these over. As long as they do not break off, we will be transferring them over. But let me go ahead and get started on this. All right, so I've loosened all of the bolts surrounding it. The only bolts you need to loosen are this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I also went ahead and took out the sensor that sat here. It is a 19mm. All you gotta do is pull up this red tab and then push down on this black portion here, and then a 19mm will take it out. This one's a little more difficult to hit due to all these lines/wires in the way. So I'm gonna wait till we get that out of the car to remove that portion, and I'm gonna wait till we lift the cooler to access this hose clamp a little better. I'm not gonna fight with it. So now once you got all those bolts out, the bottom of this does have an O-ring gasket on the bottom, so it is like shaking, but it's a little hard to get up. So what I recommend doing is, I can only show you with one hand because I'm holding the phone with the other, but grab this side and kind of wiggle it, and then with your other hand at the same time, you're gonna put it here and you're gonna wiggle it until it comes up. So I'm gonna do that and I'll be right back. All right, there we go. Didn't take much wiggling at all, so I got it up now, and I'll be right back once I get it fully disconnected from the car. All right, so here's all the oil that was leaking down there, causing Midas to think it was a rear main seal. Now that I've put it up, you can kind of see actually some of the oil is starting to drain into those holes. And also there's a trickling sign in the back, so some of it is pouring down the back here. Let me show you. It is pouring down the back here. This is where you were seeing that all that oil was coming. This is exactly what you were seeing, but now there's nothing in the way. It can flow a whole lot more freely. So this was your oil leak, and we're going to fix this. It'll probably take me, well, you know, so this doesn't look it, but this is super deep. This is like a good puddle of oil, and I believe a little bit of gas. Like, if I can't really see the depth here, but that's a good bit of oil leaking down there. But we'll be back. I'll be back once I get the new oil cooler out of the box and show you guys what the difference is. All right, so before we install the new cooler, we're gonna go ahead and clean this up. Can't do the job properly without cleaning it up. So what I have here is a siphon pump from AutoZone. It's very cheap, costing about $11. And I have, one second, it's hard to do with one hand. I got an empty bottle of oil because I want to see how much oil is actually leaking in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this bottle of oil right here on the ground and put one of these hoses. One second there. One of these hoses inside the oil. Put the other one down there inside of the all these spilled oil down here. And we're just gonna pump it a few times and siphon all this out, because if I left this all in here, even if it wasn't leaking anymore, the customer would think it's still leaking, just due to, because it will spill out over the transmission eventually, as it was doing before. So let's see, when I get this hose installed properly, I'll be right back. All right, so I couldn't get a video of it, but we got most of the oil and residue out, enough that it won't be leaking off the back of the transmission anymore anyway. So now that we got that out, now we can go over to the new oil cooler, and I'll be back to show you what the new oil cooler looks like versus the old one. All right, so the difference between the new one and the old one is, this is the old one. The old one is made of all plastic. The new one is all aluminum. That prevents leaks. This ends up leaking from the plastic hinges around it, and also the gaskets over time, but the bigger issue is that it's made of plastic. So this one will actually last you a whole lot longer, and you should not have this leak again during your lifetime of the vehicle anyway. So that's the main difference between them. So I'm gonna go ahead and reseal this up for you and throw it back in there and see how it runs. All right, so before we can switch these over, we got to put on some new gaskets. If you check here, the bottom of these each got gaskets. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different gaskets and an O-ring on the bottom of here. So before we can transfer that over, we got to switch over, throw some gaskets in there. So the Dorman bag comes with about all the gaskets you're gonna need. The orange ones are intake manifold gaskets. These are all different sizes, so pay attention to where you put them. They're only gonna fit. If they're not fitting properly, then you're not putting them in the right hole. All right, so first we're gonna put on this O-ring, lube it up some with some oil, just so it does not, just so it doesn't tear when you put it on. You wanna stretch it like this. Try to kind of roll it on. It's hard to do with gloves, but make sure it's sitting securely. So that's one O-ring down. I'm gonna lube this one up too. This is the smallest one that goes around the back edge, just like that. Make sure it's sitting there securely. Lube this one up as well. This one goes. Let's see, where does this one go? I'm gonna leave that one out for now. Instead, we'll lube this one up now. And this one should go around here, but no, it looks a little too big for that. This one goes here. That is the biggest one. So you want to push them in. They will stretch eventually when they're inside the car. Let's see. Might be missing one gasket. It's not in here. Let me see. Yeah, we are missing one gasket. It's right here. Alright. Nope, that one does not go there. Let's switch these out. Pause. All right, so a little bit of a confusion there, but I did go ahead and redo all the gaskets. I'm not sure if this matters, but if you notice, there's an indent right here on the inside of each one of these holes here, each one of these ports. So I'm not sure if it matters, but I know manufacturers don't generally do that for no reason. So when you put these gaskets on, just make sure to line up these little dots on the inside of the O-ring / gasket, and just line it up with that those indents inside of the oil cooler. All right, so we got to reseal the top of it as well. This one is much more simple, more straightforward. Just plop those 2 gaskets in there, pre-lube them, of course. Make sure there's no debris on them. Then just plop them on in there. Next, we're gonna do the oil cooler, the actual oil cooler itself, the install for that. If you notice here, there is a little mark right here. That's not a bolt hole. And there's one on this side as well. What that indicates is that the orientation of the oil cooler. So if you see here, you got, I call it a nipple. You got 2 nipples here, and that's where they sit in properly. All right. So we are not reusing any of the old bolts from the old hardware. This one actually came with new bolts. I believe these are T30s. This goes around the edge of the oil cooler. And this is made of aluminum, so you don't need any heavy tools on this. And I would hand thread them if you do end up using any power tools first. I would hand thread it so you don't crack the aluminum or strip threads. I like to do them in a star pattern so that it seals evenly. Once you have them hand tightened, once you have them hand tightened, grab a T30 like I was saying. Just spin them down a little more until they're snug. I'm not sure the exact torque specs on these, but I can look them up and let you guys know in the comments in the video. But the same process as before, go across when you do it. You want to apply the pressure evenly so the seal seals properly. Once you have it down, just grab your ratchet and tighten them up. Like I said, I do not know the torque specs, but I will grab that for you guys to put in the comments. But it's just small bolts, I would just tighten until snug in the star pattern, same as before. All right, once you have them snug, just go around them again and give them a once more tighten over. See here, make sure they're not too tight, but not too loose either, just enough to hold this oil clip down properly. So this is that pressure sensor I took off earlier while I was still in the car. It's best to go ahead and install it now. This is a 19 millimeter. Once you hand tighten it in there, just snug it up some until that's secure. Alright, should be good enough. That did not have an O-ring on it. I believe those use a sort of self-sealing liquid, similar to RTV. Next, we need to get this one off. That one's probably 27 millimeter. Yeah, that one's a 27. I don't advise using the gun to get it off, because it's probably, there's a chance it can snap. It is brittle, but if it snaps, I'll just buy her a new one. This one did not snap, so I'm gonna go ahead and transfer that over as well. Absolutely do not put this back on with a gun, you will mess it up. I'm gonna put that one back on with the ratchet. So similar process, you want to screw it back in, hand tighten it. Alright, so 27 millimeter. Like I said, hand tighten it. Do not use the impact on this. Going to tighten that until snug. So that'll be good enough there. Let's get one more turn for good measure. It's good enough there. Pause. Alright, so now we can slide it back in the car. We done cleaned up down there. Got all the O-rings, the gaskets on properly. They look like, they're up a little bit, but I promise they seal once you push them down. Got the oil coolers and the seals to start properly. Both sensors are on. So the first step to do on this is just grab this hose here. But before we do that, hold up. All right, so first thing first, you want to put that hose on the back on. You go ahead and slide that in there. Make sure you clamp it down. And once you got that in there, you want to go ahead and reconnect these sensors. You want to do the bottom sensor first. And just slide it in there, make sure it clicks. Now let's go ahead and do the top sensor and push this red lock down once you're in there. Now the next step is to simply lower this in here properly, which can be tricky because now you got all the connections on there, but you want to lower it in there properly. Now the goal is this O-ring that was on the bottom here, you want to make sure this seats properly in there, because if you don't seat properly in there, you will have leaks. So what you want to do is give it a firm push down until you kind of hear it click, well, not click, but kind of, you know, just slide up in there. And when you know it's firm and steady, you can just give it a soft pull. If it doesn't come up, then it's clicked in there properly. All right, let's see here. Make sure you kind of just line up the holes. Make sure it's sitting a sensor on each one of those ports down there, which if it's sitting on that hole, it should be, but all right, yeah. So it's in there properly. Now this came with new hardware as well, so we're gonna go ahead and install these bolts. In order to know if it's seating properly, you just kind of move the oil cooler assembly around while you try to get them bolts in there. The bolts will not line up. The bolts not line up if the oil cooler is not sitting down properly. So that's an indication as to if you have it installed correctly. So let's see, like right here, this is not installed correctly. Kind of gotta move it around and feel for it. There we go. Let's see next. All right, if you look in that hole there, you can see the threads at the bottom, so this is lined up properly. Mainly anyway. Just grab that, kind of readjust this some. See it at the bottom here. Okay. Let's go for another one. There we go. That one's installed. There we go.
Check your Wi-Fi when you get a chance.
Second. So I went ahead and blocked out the intake ports and cleaned out the debris that was sitting around the intake, around the cylinder head. Sorry. You're gonna need all new intake manifold gaskets when you do this job. It makes zero sense to not replace them. So we're gonna put some brand new gaskets on here, make sure there's no air leaks. But here's the oil cooler installed, and now in order to put this car back together, you need to follow all the steps you did in reverse, and good luck. All right, we changed out the lower and bottom intake manifold gaskets. These were the old ones, and they require oily. Here are the new ones. Whenever you do this job, it does not make sense to not change them out. So don't be lazy, change them out. All right, now that the lower intake manifold is on, we're gonna take off the lower intake manifold gaskets. I'll replace those with new gaskets as well. So find it easy, just use a little pick tool and pick them off one by one. go. Same as before, we're gonna put brand new gaskets on here, making sure we have no air leaks. Just make sure that push down in there evenly. There's no big trick to this, pretty simple. Cool. I'll be back when the upper intake manifold is reinstalled. One thing I went ahead and put this intake manifold on the upper. One thing I would say be careful of is this is made of cheap plastic, and these were already cracked beforehand, so I didn't torque these down to absolute spec. There's another one here, but be careful when you tighten these down. Somebody has worked on this before, so there is small cracks around the edges, especially on the bolt holes. So I would just say be very careful. I'm not gonna tell you not to follow the torque sequence. Torque tightness, but I will tell you to tighten as necessary without cracking that manifold even more, because if it's cracked again, it won't hold anyway. So now we're gonna go ahead and got some new O-rings for these two fuel injectors. Gotta go pick them up. Once I can get those, I'll reinstall that. I already got the fuel injectors on this side replugged in. Let's see if we have a new gasket for that manifold. For that throttle body, pick up a new throttle body gasket. But other than that, we're essentially almost all done. Got to throw the filter on, of course. But other than that, we pretty much finishing up now, so I'll be back with a first start.